Ever get that creeping sensation like the air around you shifts just enough to make your skin crawl? That's the kind of night I've been having. My name's Barry Green. I'm 46 years old, standing 5'11" and tall, and weighing around 175 lb. I manage accounts for a prominent manufacturing firm. My wife, Victoria, though she prefers to be called Vicky, is also 46. She's 5'6" and weighs about 130 lb and has a figure that still turns heads. Tonight, she looked particularly stunning. In the dress she wore, Vicky works in design and graphics at a large advertising agency here in Fort Worth. We've been married for 25 years, and our history goes way back. We grew up on the same street and were inseparable from the 4th grade. By high school, we were dating, and Vicky was my prom date that night. We grew closer in a way that marked the beginning of our lifelong bond. We both attended the University of Texas for 3 years, sharing a one-bedroom apartment. For the two, you could say we were already living as a couple back then. Now we have a 21-year-old daughter, Irene, who's studying at the University of Oklahoma. Yes, she crossed the border, a bit of a traitor. I tease her. Irene recently got engaged to Oliver Young, a fine young man from Oklahoma City. His family is well off thanks to their ties to a major oil company in Norman at 26. Oliver is a few years older than Irene, but his maturity stands out. He's deeply devoted to her, and we couldn't be happier. He's studying business law while Irene is still exploring her options, taking various classes without committing to a major. Mostly, she's enjoying her time as a cheerleader and, well, spending my money financially. We're in a solid place. Vicky earns about $60,000 a year, while I pull in over $500,000 annually 15 years ago. We stumbled across a foreclosed property on Lake Arlington. We made a cash offer of $350,000, renovated it, and now it's valued at over $2 million. But back to tonight, and the reason for this nagging tension. 3 days ago, Vicky casually mentioned an upcoming company party on Saturday night. After outlining the details, she said, "Barry, I know these events aren't really your thing, and you'll probably be too tired, so don't feel obligated to come." Her tone was casual, but I felt compelled to join her. "No, Vicky," I replied. "I'm off the next few days. I'd love to go." However, over the following days, she repeatedly suggested I didn't need to attend each time. I reassured her that I was looking forward to meeting her colleagues. Her persistence in trying to dissuade me only strengthened my resolve. When the evening of the party arrived, Vicky looked breathtaking in a sleek black dress that accentuated her curves and made her blonde hair shimmer. Her blue eyes sparkled under the venue's low lighting as we entered the main room. I noticed a man in his 50s heading straight toward her. Vicky extended her hand slightly, almost in a subtle gesture to halt him, before quickly turning to me with a bright smile and planting a kiss on my cheek. That's when the first pang of unease hit me. We shared a few drinks, though I made sure to stay sober. I was driving and, more importantly, wanted to keep my senses sharp. It wasn't Vicky I was doubting. Never in our 25 years of marriage had I suspected her loyalty, but something about this man set off alarms. In my mind later, as we sat at our table, I overheard someone mention his name, Peter Smith. The unease deepened. Peter was a senior advertising sales rep at Vicky's agency. As we danced, I couldn't help but notice Vicky glancing his way each time Peter's eyes were already locked on us. It wasn't just coincidence. It felt deliberate. After one dance, as we caught our breath at the table, Peter approached without so much as acknowledging me. He turned directly to Vicky and asked if she'd like to dance with him. The audacity was infuriating. He didn't even SPB me a glance, let alone ask my permission. My blood boiled and my fists clenched beneath the table as I fought to keep my composure. Vicky, sensing how close I was to losing it, stepped in before things escalated. Vicky smiled sweetly at Peter and declined his invitation to dance, saying, "All my dances are reserved for my husband." I caught a brief flash of irritation in his eyes before he turned and headed to the dance floor with another woman for a moment. I felt a small sense of triumph, but that feeling didn't last long. Not much later, Vicky asked for another drink, so I made my way to the bar. On my way back, the sight that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Peter was standing in front of Vicky, talking to her. The expression on her face, a mixture of sadness and what looked like pleading, sent a chill through me. I stayed hidden in the crowd, watching as her lips moved, forming the words, "Sorry, baby." Over the years, I've picked up a knack for reading lips, and there was no mistaking those words, "Sorry, baby." They echoed in my mind for the rest of the evening, leaving me cold and alert. I didn't touch another drink. My senses were on edge, picking up every glance and whisper from the people around us. It felt like the room knew something I didn't, a secret everyone else was in on by the time we left. My head was spinning with questions once we were in the car. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "What's going on with Peter?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could, though the suspicion and hurt were clear. "Who is he?" "Vicky, the two of you seem close. Are you cheating on me?" Vicky sighed deeply, her voice calm but deliberate. "Peter is just a coworker. I can't believe you'd even think that. I love you more than anything, Barry." Her tone was steady, but it felt off, like she was trying a little too hard to sound convincing. I didn't press her further that night, letting the silence fill the car, but she knew me well enough to understand the storm brewing inside. I've never been the kind of man to just roll over. Vicky has seen it firsthand. Back in high school, when a guy bullied me, I waited until the school day ended, cornered him, and made sure he never bothered me or anyone else again. Vicky had my back then, swearing to the teachers I couldn't have done it because I was with her the whole time. She knows I won't tolerate betrayal. If she's involved with Peter, she should know there will be consequences. Yet in the pit of my stomach, the doubt lingered. The way she looked at him, the way she spoke, those words, "Sorry, baby." It all left me unsettled. Maybe I was overthinking it, or maybe I wasn't. Either way, I needed answers. I wasn't going to sit in the dark, so I hired a private investigator. Discreet, professional, and effective. A few weeks later, he handed me a stack of evidence, photos, videos, and even audio recordings. The truth was laid bare before me one morning. As Vicky, I sat in the dining room sipping coffee like we had for years. I decided it was time to confront her. "Vicky," I began, keeping my tone neutral. "You'd never cheat on me, right? You'd never have, huh?" Her eyes snapped up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "No, honey, of course not. Why would you even ask that?" she replied, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her coffee cup. I didn't say a word. Instead, I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a manila envelope, and began laying out the photos on the table one by one. They told the story. Vicky kissing Peter outside a Motel 6, walking into a room with him, his car parked in front of our house. And then the worst ones. Vicky in my favorite recliner, straddling him, the same chair I used to relax in after long days at work. Finally, there was the image of the two of them in our bed. Vicky's face went pale. Her hands trembled as she reached for one of the photos. "Barry, it's not what you think," she stammered. "I don't care about him, it's just physical, nothing more." My voice was low and cold. "It means everything to me, Vicky." She looked desperate, scrambling to explain. "He's not better than you, Barry, not even close. It's not about that. It's just different, that's all." Her words made my blood boil. But the final blow came when she admitted, "We've been doing this for over a year." "A year," I said, my voice rising despite my attempt to control it. "You've had a boyfriend for over a year." "No," she protested, almost offended. "At work. We don't call it that. I'm his office wife. It's just part of the culture. A lot of people do it, Barry." I clenched my fists, trying to make sense of her twisted justification. She reached out for my hand, tears streaming down her face. "You're not gonna leave me, are you?" she whispered, leaning back in my chair. I shook my head slowly. "No, Vicky, I'm not leaving." Her face lit up with a glimmer of hope. "Before I dropped the bombshell, you are." Her mouth fell open, but before she could respond, I delivered the final blow. "Your clothes and personal items are already packed. They're in your BMW. You can leave now. I want you out of my house now." Without waiting for her response, I grabbed Vicky by the arm and led her firmly to her car. Tears streamed down her face, her eyes red and swollen, but I felt no pity. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. "Where will I go, Barry?" she sobbed, desperation dripping from every word. I met her gaze, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "I don't care where you go. Go live with your office husband." Her face twisted with panic. "I can't go to him," she whispered. "Peter is married. He has 3 kids. I already knew that the private investigator had been thorough, providing me with names, addresses, and even photos of Peter's family. But I wasn't about to let Vicky know how much I had uncovered. "Figure it out," I said, my tone sharp and unyielding. "Go back to Motel 6 if that's what you want, but you're done here. Don't come back." Her sobs turned into uncontrollable cries as she pleaded Barry. "Are you seriously going to throw away 25 years of a good marriage?" I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "No, Vicky. It was less than 24 years of a good marriage, and over a year of betrayal. You're the one who threw it away," without another word. She climbed into her BMW, still crying, and sped off into the night. I stood in the driveway for a moment, watching her taillights fade for a fleeting second. I thought about how quiet the house would feel without her, but the anger quickly drowned out any trace of sentiment. Later that evening, just as I was beginning to settle my thoughts, the phone rang. It was Irene, answered. "Hello, Irene. How's everything going with the wedding plans?" I asked, injecting as much cheerfulness into my voice as I could muster. Her paw on the other end was long enough to send a chill through me. "Dad," she began. Hesitantly, I just got off the phone with Mom. She's crying and saying you threw her out of the house. What's going? My stomach tightened. The last thing I wanted was to involve Irene in this mess. But there was no avoiding it now. "Irene, listen carefully," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Your mother has been unfaithful. She's been having an affair with a coworker for over a year." Her response was like a slap in the face. "Dad, grow up," she scoffed. "It's the 21st century. That kind of thing happens all the time. It's not a big deal if a woman gets some action on the side. Men have been doing it forever." I clenched the phone tighter, my voice taut with frustration. "I've never done it, and I won't tolerate it in my marriage. Are you telling me you think it's okay, Dad? That's none of your business," she replied, her tone sharp. "Besides, Oliver and I'm not even married yet. Whatever I do is my concern, not his." The words stung. Who else in our family thinks like this? Aunt Gloria does. Dad, so what? My head spun. "My own family, a pack of cheaters, Irene," I said firmly. "I'm not letting your mother come back, and that's final." She sighed, clearly exasperated. "Mom wants Peter to be involved in the wedding, and I agree, he's a great guy." My anger boiled over. "If you want Peter at your wedding, let him walk you down the aisle, because if he's there, I won't be." I hung up, ignoring the calls that followed throughout the night. 2 days. Vicky showed up at the house with a court order in hand. She had managed to get temporary permission to return home until the divorce proceedings were finalized. She stood in the living room, calm and composed, trying to justify her actions. "Barry, my affair wasn't affecting our marriage," she said evenly. "I've always been affectionate with you when you asked for it, and I can continue to be that way. But I don't see why I should stop seeing Peter." The sheer audacity of her words left me momentarily speechless. "You honestly believe this has no impact on our marriage?" I finally managed, my voice low and cold. "Let me make one thing clear. I will never touch you again. You can keep the master bedroom. It's already tainted. I've been sleeping in the guest room ever since I learned the truth." Her voice shook. Barry, I am not, she began, but I cut her off. I don't care what you want to call yourself, Vicky. It doesn't change a damn thing. I'm filing for divorce this week. Vicky's demeanor shifted. I don't want a divorce, she said, her tone suddenly calculated. And you should know, Peter and I have consulted his lawyer. If you go through with this, I'll get the house, half of all our assets, and a big chunk of your paycheck in alimony. You make more than I do, Barry. You might as well accept it. Like Peter says, her smirk was the final straw. Go to hell, I spat, barely containing my rage. You and Peter both. I stormed off to my room, slamming the door shut behind me. Hours later, just as the clock neared midnight, there was a soft knock when I opened the door. Vicky stood there, her face strewn with tears. Barry, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. I want us to work this out, but I also want, Peter, her words hung in the air like a slap to the face. I didn't know whether to laugh at the absurdity or cry at the sheer betrayal. The next morning, I sought advice from one of our company lawyers. His assessment was grim, echoing Vicky's taunts. If I pursued a divorce, she'd likely get the house, half of everything we owned, and with Irene already out of the house, there'd be no child support. Worse, I'd be on the hook for approximately $125,000 a year in alimony, B said with a heavy sigh. There's no easy way around this. You're going to take a financial hit no matter what. The days that followed were tense, but eerily quiet. Vicky and Rick, I avoided speaking, the silence between us a heavy weight. But on the third day, she finally broke it, so she sneered, her voice laced with contempt. Are you still foolish enough to go through with this divorce? My lawyer is still reviewing everything. I replied flatly. Screw you, Barry, she hissed. I'll take everything you have. I didn't bother responding, taking a long sip from my drink instead. An hour later, I saw her on the phone in the dining room. She walked over and handed me the receiver with a smug expression. Someone wants to talk to you, Barry, she said, triumph gleaming in her eyes. Hello, I answered, bracing myself. Barry, this is Peter, came the voice on the other end, casual yet condescending. Listen, man, I get that you're upset, but you need to accept this and roll with it, cocky boy. Otherwise, we'll take everything you have. Make your life miserable. You have no idea who you're messing with, I growled into the phone, barely able to contain my anger. You can keep her. I don't want her anymore. She's damaged goods. Screw you. And with that, I slammed the phone down, fury coursing through me. Vicky stood there staring at me, her expression unreadable. I couldn't fathom how she and Peter could be so bold, so reckless. Did they honestly believe they were untouchable? The evidence I had collected, videos, photos, audio recordings, painted a damning picture. Speaking of audio, if they were so smart, wouldn't they have realized that the conversations in this house, even on the phone, were being recorded? The following week, Vicky met Peter at Motel 6 4 times. She never brought him back to the house again. I had made it clear that if she did, there would be serious consequences. I think she finally understood I wasn't bluffing at work. Things had shifted. Our company had been acquired by a larger firm based in Colorado. They were consolidating operations, and my position as accounts manager was under scrutiny. Tim, a sharp young manager from the purchasing company, was being considered to take over. I liked Tim. He was efficient, easygoing, and had been through a divorce himself, so he understood the turmoil I was navigating. The company had offered me a buyout, $500,000, along with converting my retirement into company stock. It was tempting. One night, Tim and I hit up a local pub near the plant. He frequented the place, his divorce leaving him with ample free time. Over beers, we talked about life, and something he said stuck with me, Barry. I know what you're going through. Tim said, my ex took everything. I just wish I had sold it all off or given it away before the divorce. Tim, I said, finishing my drink. You're the smartest guy I know. Later that night, I went home, my mind racing. Vicky wasn't there, likely off with Peter again. As the hours passed, I realized how little I missed her presence at one time. I had loved Vicky more than anything, but now all I felt was hatred. Sunday came and I was watching football when my phone rang. It was Irene. "Dad, are you getting over your anger?" she asked, her tone hesitant. "What do you want, Irene?" I replied, already weary. "Mom asked me to talk to you about the wedding." "All right," I said. "What's going on?" "Mom and I think Peter should be part of the wedding," she said, her voice unnervingly casual. "Maybe he could walk up the aisle behind you and me then sit with Mom when we reach her." I felt my jaw tighten. "Irene, is that really what you want?" "Yes, Daddy," she said firmly. "I think it is. And I know Mom feels the same way. You're my father and Mom's husband." "But Peter's her office husband," Irene said casually over the phone, "so we both think he should be there." I took a deep breath, holding back my anger. "Irene, I have a better idea. Let your office dad walk you down the aisle because I won't be there." "Dad, don't be ridiculous," she scoffed. "Oliver doesn't like this either, but he'll get over it by our wedding night." "Irene, I wish you a good life, sweetie. Goodbye." "What does that mean, Dad?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. I didn't respond. Instead, I hung up and sat there, my eyes brimming with tears. That evening, Vicky came home and asked with a smirk, "Did you miss me, honey?" I replied coldly, "I will never miss you." She ran off to her room crying, but I didn't care. The next morning, at exactly 8, I arrived at the corporate office and accepted the company's buyout offer. $500,000 was transferred into an offshore account, along with one salary with the house and cars already paid off. I went straight to the bank there. I arranged paperwork to borrow against the house. Vicky's BMW, the house valued at over $2 million, easily secured a $2 million loan, and I borrowed $40,000 against her car, which was worth 4,500,000. The goal was simple: to burden Vicky with debt. The tricky part would be getting her to sign the documents back at the office. I worked diligently to wrap up my final 2 weeks and ensure a smooth transition for Tim, who had earned my respect and trust that afternoon. I called the wedding planner to cancel my credit cards, ensuring no expenses related to the wedding could be charged to me then. "Who will pay for it, Mr. Green?" she asked, surprised. "Tell Irene to ask her new dad, Peter," I replied curtly. I created several fake life insurance policy applications, each for $1 million, claiming it was necessary for future security. Later that evening, I called Vicky. She sounded surprised but eager. "Vicky, if you're not with Peter tonight, how about we have a nice dinner?" "That sounds great," she exclaimed. "I'm so happy you're getting past all this. Where do you want to go? The Italian place downtown? Under the lights? Is that okay?" "That sounds so romantic, darling." "Maybe you'll get lucky tonight, Barry." "I hope to get luckier than you think," I said with a smile she couldn't see at dinner. Vicky was unusually affectionate, even trying to kiss me. I gently brushed her off and told her later. I then brought up the life insurance policy, explaining that the company had suggested I take it out with her as the beneficiary. "Vicky, isn't your sister Gloria a notary?" "Yes, Barry." "She is?" Vicky replied. "We need to sign these in front of a notary. Let's go to her house tonight, get it done, and then we can celebrate." "Okay, Barry," she said, her judgment clouded by 6 glasses of wine. We drove to her sister's house, where Vicky happily signed and notarized the documents without bothering to read them. She was so overjoyed by the evening that she never questioned a thing. The next day, I rushed the signed papers to the bank, and the mortgage company. The $40,000 loan was quickly approved, while the $2 million loan would take about a week to process. I arranged for the funds to be transferred into my offshore account by the end of the week. I had completed my time at the company. I stopped by a Ford dealership and traded in my truck for a brand new F-350, paying in cash. Then I went to the bank and systematically closed all our joint credit cards, emptied our savings, and withdrew every dollar from our checking accounts, leaving only $1,000 behind. I also had a trusted friend move the offshore funds into several different accounts to cover my tracks. The hardest part was facing Oliver, my future son-in-law. I sat him down and explained everything: Vicky's betrayal, the wedding funds being cut off, and my concerns about Irene's behavior. I handed him the audio recordings of my conversations with her. Oliver was devastated. Next, I visited Peter Smith's house. His wife, a stunning woman in her 50s, answered the door. I handed her the evidence videos, pictures, and audio recordings. She broke down in tears, but thanked me before I left. She admitted that this wasn't the first time Peter had cheated, but it would be the last time she tolerated it. What I hadn't expected was her revelation. She was a major shareholder in the advertising agency Peter worked for. I couldn't help but wonder how that might affect a few careers. As for Vicky, I couldn't help but think about how she would handle her $900 car payment and $166,000 monthly mortgage. Perhaps her office husband could lend her a hand for now. I was off to pick up my new 36T fifth-wheel travel trailer. Both the truck and the RV were paid for in cash and registered under my cousin's name. Everything was falling into place. I also had 3 credit cards in Peter's name, which added a nice touch to my exit strategy. My plan was simple: head to Florida, lay low for a few years, and hoped Vicky eventually filed for divorce on the grounds of abandonment. If things went smoothly, I wouldn't have to lift a finger. Fast forward 1 year and 3 months. And the fall had been remarkable. Peter's world had completely fallen apart. His divorce left him with nothing. His ex-wife, who turned out to be sharper than I anticipated, took the house 60% of their assets and locked in a court-mandated $60,000 annual alimony payment. Peter lost his cushy job at the advertising agency, thanks in part to his ex-wife being a shareholder, and ended up working at one of the few remaining Blockbuster video stores, rewinding tapes and cleaning DVDs. He now resides in a dingy one-room apartment above an adult store. Vicky, on the other hand, faced an even harsher reality. The crushing mortgage payments and car loans she never knew existed caught up with her. She had always believed the house was fully paid off, but once the debts became unmanageable, foreclosure took the home. Her car was repossessed shortly after, with her credit in ruins. She couldn't secure a decent apartment and ended up losing her job at the advertising agency. Now she scrapes by waiting tables at a Denny's off the interstate. Desperate, Vicky filed for abandonment in hopes of obtaining a divorce and qualifying for welfare assistance. Unfortunately for her, the process didn't go as planned. The court couldn't locate me, so she had to settle for a quick, no-fault divorce just to access the benefits she needed to survive. As for Irene, her life took a nosedive as well. Oliver confronted her about the audio recordings I gave him. She tried to brush it off, claiming it was no big deal and nothing more than casual arrangements. But Oliver wasn't buying it. He called off the wedding, leaving Irene stunned and without the support of his wealthy family. Now Irene and Vicky live together in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. From what I've heard, they've been spending a lot of time together. Though the situation seems questionable at best, the steady stream of men showing up at their place every night, each handing over $20 bills, paints a troubling picture. As for me, I'm living the dream in sunny southern Florida. The weather is perfect, the beaches are lined with bikinis, and I've landed a fantastic job with one of the big 5 companies. Life couldn't be better. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more.